I love horror. Films, TV shows, books, but if you ask me, nothing quite beats the true terror of a horror video game. And there's been no shortage of greats over the years, from the original Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, all the way through to games like Amnesia and the Dead Space series. Every Halloween, I dive into Steam and look for a new game to scare me senseless. But this year, I noticed something a little strange. When I went under the horror tag on the store and sorted by user reviews to discover the best of the best, I noticed I didn't recognize the majority of the games. Have we discovered a hidden trove of terrifying tales, or are Steam user reviews just rubbish? I thought I'd go through the supposedly best top 25 horror games, not bundles or DLC, just games, on Steam to ask, are they any good? And more importantly, are they scary? Welcome to the Steam 25 Horror. Sat at the number 3 position is People Playground. People Playground is a destruction simulator that hands you the tools to dismember and destroy as many people, androids, and spider monsters as your heart desires. With a plethora of items, powers, and tools, you can jump from sandbox to sandbox, creating all manner of elaborate death traps. So, is it any good? If you're anything like me, you'll be familiar with the internet game Interactive Buddy. It was wildly popular for a good while. I bring it up because while this game is very much an evolved version of that one, much like Interactive Buddy, it's hard to write a whole review around a game like that. You spawn people in, kill them, and do it again. People Playground is entirely a game that gives back as much as you put in. Without any tutorial or pre-made setups to load in, the onus is entirely on you to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. The range of items is varied. You have all the basics, axes and spears, through to weirder potions and guns. While this sort of open-ended design can sometimes feel exciting, here it comes across as overwhelming. Every item is open to you from the beginning. There's no build or gain. And with that comes boredom. I'm not saying the game needs a deep narrative story mode, but a collection of tutorials encouraging creativity and locking some items behind goals as rewards would go a long way to encouraging uses of strange items and give a reason to continue playing as you hunt for more ways to destroy these blocky people. As it is, I found myself growing quickly bored of the items and locations available. The visuals and audio are largely very simple, but in a game like this, really one of the most important features is the people. How well do they work as crash test dummies to your schemes? Here again, the game has some brilliant mechanics but doesn't quite manage to integrate them well enough. On the one hand, the destruction simulations on the blocky folk are great. There are two options to play with, the basic and the experimental. The experimental loads the people with organs and other features to add to the madness, but can be glitchy. Though even on the basic mode, the figures have skeletons. They bruise and bleed around wounds, and can even be knocked unconscious. The levels of destruction possible are huge. Another great feature is the inspect tool. This tool shows you in detail how your fellow is doing. His blood pressure, adrenaline, and even his consciousness if you knock him out. The addition of these fluctuating stats makes it just as much fun to try and patch a dummy back together after blasting him as it is to blast him. Hurriedly bandaging, repairing, and maybe shooting a dummy full of adrenaline to get him back up is a great little minigame within the simulation. It's strange then that the inspect feature is located so far down the drop-down box, and to really use it effectively requires you to select the entire model. As mentioned earlier, it's a great mechanic that feels too buried to be as fully embraced as it could and should be. The blocky characters are also entirely stationary. You can set them to walk and sit, but they show no personality or character aside from that. It feels like a huge omission, and something that could immediately add so much content to the game. There's a needle, for example, that turns a person into a zombie, which sounds like a great deal of fun, but in reality just rots their flesh. The zombie won't go after other dummies to bite them, it just remains stationary. With the level of complex destructibility on display, it's a crying shame that the game doesn't feature even minor character scripting, except the spider monster, which spits acid at people. The inability to give a blocky person one of the many guns in the game and see if he can kill the monster before it kills him feels like a huge missed opportunity. All in all, it really comes back to that early line. This is a game that gives back what you put in. That idea, but taken to the max. A lack of character interactions, unlocks, or any sort of pre-made setups mean you really are entirely on your own. Personally, I found myself growing bored very quickly, and fun and creative though the people physics are, the best features are tucked away. But is it scary? Like all the games I look at here, I switched all the lights off, plugged in some headphones, and really set the mood to spooky, to give the game the best shot it could at making me shiver. So, is it scary? I feel as though you can guess the answer already. No, not in the slightest. I suppose if gore and dismemberment, even in pixel form, is something that really gets under your skin, then perhaps that might give you some discomfort. At a stretch, you could get philosophical and say, the horror is internal as you realise the joy you're gaining from inflicting torture onto these innocent digital folk, and question why that brings you so much delight and what that says about you as a person. Beyond that, though, nothing. There really isn't any more to say on it in terms of horror. Would I recommend it? Personally, no. Even going back and playing Interactive Buddy or one of the hundreds of free online simulators of this type, or loading up Gary's Mod, a cheaper game, would more than satisfy that hunger for this style of game. If, however, you're a massive fan of these games, then maybe you'll find something here for you. There are a handful of fun ideas and tools in here, but for most, as it is now, these features won't hold your interest for long enough to justify the price. And as for horror, it isn't, so not a recommendation on that front either. Here's where it falls in the ranking table. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, a comment, and hey, maybe even subscribe. Hope this has been helpful, and look forward to seeing you next week with the next in the Steam 25 Horror. See you then.